pursuit of the women's agenda. And there's something that he said which I always want to remind ourselves. One statement that he's made, and we have never forgotten about it, is that we must be bold. Be bold. And we also commend our former heads of state, first ladies, heads of state, wives, those who have passed on and those who are living at this point in time. It is a role that is very, very difficult. And I must tell you that if we celebrate a day where we are eulogizing women, we should never forget our first ladies. Because even given a role as a leader anywhere, you can attest to the fact, and especially the men, you can attest to the fact, the roles that are played by your spouses. It is something that we cannot ignore. So I'll take this opportunity to commend them highly, and I'll also doing so, I also take this opportunity for the 4 main women parliamentarians who have served for their 4th time in Parliament. It is not easy. First, to ensure that you seat a man. And secondly, to be able to withstand all the pressures, including what you even face domestically. Mr. Speaker, a number of statements have been made to underscore the point of the importance of women in our society. And it goes without saying that if we're celebrating a day like this, and the theme is accelerate action, it is important that we look at most of the factors that can help us accelerate the action of achieving the equality that we want. What are we talking about? I like the contribution made by Honorable Minister for Education, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, emphasizing the need for us to look at our Constitution and the need to review the Constitution. Much as I agree with him on this point, I would like to also emphasize that all of us here have a role to play. We are the representatives of the people out there. Luckily, we have passed the legislative instrument in the name of Affirmative Action Law 1121 of 2024. What is going to be our role to ensure that we educate, as was his bid? We need to educate people to accept the very existence of women, not as a superior being or a lesser being, but as partners with our male counterparts. So if we are in this Parliament and we have the Affirmative Action Act, it behoves on each and every individual here to do the education. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that we invited the Minister for Gender here to know exactly what are the steps or the strategies he's adopting to ensure the implementation of the Affirmative Action Act. I think he's been given a number of steps. And we have to pay particular attention to that and ensure that the implementation will go on smoothly without any hitches. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to state that on the day that the President came to give the SONA, he made a specific statement, which personally I felt was an excuse to exonerate himself from not being able to achieve the required percentage for the inclusion of women in the appointments that he was offering out there. And then he mentioned specifically that in the case of even the local governors, he's finding it difficult to find the right women to occupy those positions. And I would like to plead with our president that, Mr. President, you can make a deliberate effort for people to search each district, and you will be able to identify a capable woman who can occupy that seat, and that 30% will be achieved. I don't think we've put our mind to ways of ensuring that we are going to identify the right people to occupy the spaces. We are only giving excuses for what we feel might be a difficult task to undertake. And Mr. Speaker, I feel that what we have a number of barriers that we need to break. It is important that as Parliament, not only for the sake of the women, or not, the responsibility doesn't lie only with the women, but men as well, to be sure of what is happening and ensuring the implementation of the Affirmative Action Act. We need to engage Parliament, members of Parliament, to understand and then carry this one through to our various constituencies and create awareness. That awareness creation is very important. And then we can educate and let people know some of the things that we do that would not help us. Try and identify the right people, because the theme is accelerate action. And it is if each and every one over here is playing its role, and you can even identify one woman to do something. If you look at the multipliers effect, it is definitely going to help with the process. And Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate everybody who appreciates the role that women have played, everybody who doesn't think that pursuing gender or women's affair is only being a feminist, but we are thinking through what the future of our children, our female children, our female grandchildren, and ensuring that they become part of the leadership of the country. Mr. Speaker, I realize that you are in a rush and you want to calm me down. So what I would say with these few words, I am adding my voice to congratulate all women and the achievements they've made so far, especially our new members of Parliament who have the female parliamentarians who have unseated the men and be here to contribute their quota towards the achievement of gender equality. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much. I think the leader would like to conclude by 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know you are pressed for time, but I want to take this opportunity for saying a few words to the statement ably made by Honorable Comfort Deo. Mr. Speaker, I will take the opportunity to also congratulate all women for today. Mr. Speaker, women play a very important role in this nation and around the world. Mr. Speaker, earlier on a statement was made, which was made by one famous Ghanaian, Dr. Kujiri Agri, that if you educate a man, you educate an individual, but you do educate a woman, you do educate a nation. Mr. Speaker, this statement was made about 125 years ago. I wonder, it's ironic that we have the government statistician here. I wonder how much research he had done to come to that conclusion that you educate a woman, you will actually educate a nation. Mr. Speaker, if that statement were to be made today, you will say that if you educate a woman, you will probably educate a continent. Mr. Speaker, women play a very important role. A lot of advice or a lot of decisions that are made by men are actually made by women. When they say women control the world, women actually control the world. When you hear people saying that a certain man was making a decision that they think is not the right decision, and the answer they will say that they are sure that it was his wife who advised him to make that decision. So a lot of decisions are being made by women. We should celebrate our women. Affirmative action is not an event. It's an accelerated, something that we should be doing in progress. And I thank His Excellency the President for choosing a female as his partner to become the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana. And he is appointing women to occupy positions. We should be looking at in the future, not only in political circles, but in boardrooms and executive positions, how many women we have there. And it's not just appointing them to those positions, but actually supporting them to keep them there. Mr. Speaker, I congratulate all women today, and I wish them a very fruitful and a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me thank all the ladies here. I think I'm happy that I've been able to allow every woman in this chamber, at least those who were present, have been given the opportunity to speak. So on that note, we congratulate the women all over the world, those in Fomena constituency as well, and my wife and family. No, incidentally, all my children are ladies, and therefore, so Honorable Comfordoyo, thank you very much. Honorable members, we are bringing statement to a close. We will constitute the House into committee of the whole to enable the government statistician have discussion with us. So I will suspend sitting so that we constitute the House into leader what?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I thought we want to adjourn the House before we do the committee of the whole. Is that not?
Okay, so we don't have to.
Honorable Speaker, I was of the view that once you adjourn, but session will still be continued with the committee of the whole. So once you adjourn, you allow members to go away. But we are not adjourning now. We are just breaking the session by suspending it. And then we can, yes.
Okay, very well, Honorable.
I think it's almost the same, but I'll go with what my party is saying. Let's suspend, we engage our guests, and afterwards we adjourn the House. So, honorable members, indulge me to suspend the House for just 2 minutes so that we constitute the House into committee of the whole. Honorable members, please, honorable members, those outside, may you come in. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So I will share it. Okay, thank you. Honorable members, we have in our midst the government statistician. He's here to engage the people's representatives, and I think he's here per our invitation. Is that the case? Yes. So, honorable members, it's very, very important that we are guided with some of the information that are turned out by the statistical services. And we are fortunate to have the head of the institution here to engage us. So, without much ado, let me give the floor to the head of the statistical service, is it Professor Kwabena Enim? Yes. I will give him the floor to begin the engagement with the people's representatives. So, Prof, you have the floor now.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker of the 9th Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, Honorable members of the 9th Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, other revered persons present, good afternoon. I would want to indicate by saying that on behalf of both management and staff of the Ghana Statistical Service, we are exceedingly delighted to have the opportunity to engage with members of Parliament of the 9th Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Honorable Speaker, our excitement stems from the fact that the data and statistics community is evolving rapidly, and globally there are calls at several levels to ensure that countries of the global south are able to catch up with the evolutions that are happening. Honorable Speaker, permit me to highlight 6 issues as I go through my submission this afternoon. I really want to begin by appreciating the House of Parliament, both the 7th and 8th Parliament, that my administration has engaged with in the past 6 years. Honorable Speaker, I would want to situate this afternoon's conversation in the context of capacity development, which from our perspective strands at least 4 different dimensions, of which I would want to bring the attention of the House to that. I would get into a document that, Honorable Speaker, I've shared with all honorable members on what we titled Activities Within the Data and Statistics Space and the Resetting Ghana Agenda. I wouldn't go through the details of it, but I'll point honorable members to areas that, from our perspective, we should reflect on going forward. Honorable Speaker, the 4th issue that I want to touch on would be a demonstration of the statistical products that we produced in 2024. On the average, the Ghana Statistical Service, Honorable Speaker, publishes 50 reports annually since 2019. And we are sharing with members of Parliament the 2024 overview of different statistical reports and also statistical products that we put out there. Honorable Speaker, I'm hoping time will permit us to quickly walk you through a demonstration of the Statistical Online Bank, which my submission this afternoon will be for members of Parliament to work with Ghana Statistical Service to co-create this Statistical Online Bank. The reason why we're requesting for a co-creation is that inasmuch as the mandate rests with us as a statistical office to be producing statistics, we need to work closely with policymakers in the identification of core statistics that are needed for our development. I would end my submission, Honorable Speaker, with one proposition. Honorable Speaker, as I indicated, we came to this House in 2019, sought the approval of the House for the passage of the Statistical Service Act 2019, Act 1003. This is what the service has been working with in the last 6 years, and we are happy to indicate that we've reached an advanced stage with our legislative instrument. Having worked with the Act for the last 5 to 6 years, we've identified areas that would need to strengthen through the legislative instrument to ensure that the Act meets its expected mandate. Honorable Speaker, I also want to gladly say a big thank you to the House for helping the Ghana Statistical Service and indeed the National Statistical System to secure an International Development Association to the tune of $150 million. Honorable Speaker, which was the basis for the conduct of the 2021 population housing census and also forms the basis of the diverse statistical activities that we've been undertaking in the last 6 years. I have witnessed carefully, Honorable Speaker, the deepened use of statistics on the floor of Parliament and would want to leave this conversation by thanking honorable members for deepening the engagement with statistics, but make a plea on two perspectives. One is to build structures that would enable us to identify mechanisms for verifying the authenticity of the numbers that we work with. And secondly, building structures that would enable us to treat statistics as an integral community rather than treating statistics in a siloed perspective. Honorable Speaker, lastly, I would want to thank members who have supported us during our various dissemination processes, because that always adds to the impetus that governments put on data statistics and gets the general public to accept the statistics and use it thereafter. Honorable Speaker, I'm going to move on to situate the conversation in the context of the different dimensions of capacity development that I earlier on highlighted, which, as I indicated, can be found in different aspects of the document on activities within the data and statistics space and the Resetting Ghana agenda. So I'll make reference to various aspects of the document as I go through that. Why are we reflecting on capacity development? Honorable Speaker, 4 issues. Anytime we talk about capacity development, we always think about it from a human capacity development perspective, inasmuch as the Ghana Statistical Service has instituted a competency framework and ensuring that it applies to the entire national statistical system. There are other dimensions of human capacity development within the data and statistics space which we would want to bring to your attention. Honorable Speaker, we currently live in a world where every digital footprint that we collectively leave, we leave behind data. So in the data and statistical community, Honorable Speaker, a strong divergence is being put between what data is and what statistics is. We are hoping that as a country, we can further reflect on the distinction between what data is and what statistics is, so that we can professionally use both data and statistics as official statistics in driving our development. The 3 other areas around capacity development that I wish to bring the attention of the House to: one reflects the issue of financial capacity. Honorable Speaker, we've always talked about statistics needing funding. I would want to mention that ahead of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2016, there was an Addis Ababa action plan which led to how the Sustainable Development Goals will be funded. Honorable Speaker, currently at the global level, there are ongoing discussions, and the next Financing for Development Conference will be held in Seville, Spain, and that is going to define the future of the post-SDGs agenda that we're going to, as a global community, be held accountable to. Ghana Statistical Service is leading that conversation strongly because of some of the reasons why I'm permitted to engage Parliament today. At the global level, what we are doing is to change the narrative of data and statistics away from using data and statistics only for monitoring purposes, by using data and statistics, Honorable Speaker, to achieve at least two other reasons why we need to engage with data and statistics. One has to do with our ability to ensure that data and statistics fit into the policy space, and also data and statistics fit into the monetary space. These two other dimensions would complement the monitoring role of data and statistics. Honorable Speaker, the other area that I want to highlight with the capacity development is what we term as the system-wide engagement. The document that Honorable Speaker I've shared with, as I indicated, on page 10 of that document, I'll be glad if honorable members can avert their reflections to that page, where we highlight 12 issues. And Honorable Speaker, the one titled Activities Within the Data and Statistics Space. Thank you, member. Honorable Speaker, I wouldn't go through all 12 points. I'll be selective on areas that I think we should all have a collective reflection on. Page 10 of the document, which has 12 points in the box. Honorable Speaker, the first point is advocating for a situation where the House of Parliament would engage with the executive arm of government so that as a country would consciously build a national consensus on the needed core statistics for Ghana's development. This has never happened in the history of the country, where at any point in time we sit around the table and say that these are the core statistics that we need, these are the various sources of the core statistics that we need to influence whatever policy agenda that we want to pursue. And we are hoping that through this 9th Parliament, as a country, we would continue to have that conversation. The last of the 4 areas around capacity development, Honorable Speaker, is what we term as the infrastructure capacity development. Honorable Speaker, as you are aware, digitization, or otherwise people terming it as digitalization, is happening across our various ministries, departments, and agencies. These digitalization efforts, as I indicated earlier, are leaving behind digital footprint, and at any point in time, data is being left behind. We are hoping that infrastructure that we are building for digitalization purposes will take into consideration what we call the data interoperability, which would help us seamlessly link data across different government institutions. Honorable Speaker, I've sat in different meetings across different government ministries, departments, and agencies where our systems for capturing data are not interlinked. So even when you're talking about either government finance statistics or government monetary statistics, the numbers that we get from different government institutions are not reconcilable, and therefore we're not too sure which number to use. In which case, I earlier indicated that we have been very economical with the use of data and statistics, and also economical with and also being siloed with the engagement of data and statistics. Honorable Speaker, I'm going to highlight 2 other points in the document that I did indicate earlier on. It came to the realization of the Ghana Statistical Service a couple of years back that the then Ministry for Communication and Digitalization had developed a document on national data strategy, and subsequently a document on a national strategy for artificial intelligence. Honorable Speaker, these are the 2 domains that are driving development across both the developed world and developing worlds. If we are not deliberate in ensuring that a national strategy for the development of statistics is carefully linked to a national data strategy, which is also carefully linked to a national artificial intelligence strategy, will continue to remain in the space where other foreign organizations such as Google and all the social media outlets would have a lot more credible and enough data about what is happening in our country, while we continue to rely on traditional data sources such as surveys and censuses, which we do periodically to get a better understanding of our economy. We are hoping that, Honorable Speaker, we can carefully work with the House of the 9th Parliament of the Republic of Ghana to ensure that such policies that brings together data, statistics, and policy to realize the value chain of data impacting lives will be well coordinated. Honorable Speaker, I'm going to move on to the Ghana 2024 Statistical Year Overview, which is the second document that I've shared with yourself and honorable members of the 9th Parliament. This is the document that I'm making reference to. Honorable Speaker, if you go through this document, you clearly see that on the average, as I indicated, Ghana Statistical Service every year in the last 6 years puts out about 50 publications over the calendar year. We are concerned that these numbers are used in silos, and again, to reiterate what I said, these numbers, we are economical about its use. Honorable Speaker, you'll recall that during yesterday's release of the budget, mention was made of the GDP figures that Ghana Statistical Service put out on Monday ahead of the budget reading on Tuesday. We were happy about the engagement with the GDP figures, that is the gross domestic figures. But to underscore what I mean by we are economical about it is that we treat statistics at the macro level, at the aggregate level, where we're all interested in what happened in 2024 calendar year and which of the sectors drove the economy in 2024. Honorable Speaker, anytime we put out gross domestic product across the three main sectors, that is agric, industry, and services, within the agricultural sector, we have 5 subsectors. Within the industry sector, we have 6 subsectors. And within the services sector, we have 11 subsectors. Our plea to the House of Parliament is that if we really want to engage with data and statistics to influence policy, what we ought to do is to engage with the subsectors, that is the 5, 6, and 11 that we have under the 3 broad categories of agric, industry, and services. Honorable Speaker, this also applies to inflation. Anytime we put out inflation, like we did for February last month, we do the overall rate of inflation, which was 23.1%, put out food inflation 28.1%, and non-food inflation 18.1%. Honorable Speaker, beneath these 2 broad categorizations, we have 13 divisions for the computation of consumer price index and rate of inflation. These 13 divisions are very much linked to the structure of our governance. For instance, one of the 13 divisions focuses on housing, water, electricity, and gas, and other fuels, which we can further drill down to associate whatever price changes that we are seeing across these subclasses to our various government ministries, departments, and agencies. So we are hoping that we can go through these documents and move beyond engaging with the numbers at the aggregate level, that is the national and the broad categorization level, and engage with the details of it to inform our decision. Beyond the average of 50 publications that we do, Honorable Speaker, we always put on our website the micro data set on diverse issues, and also over time we keep improving on our digital platforms to ensure that our data and statistics is more accessible. Honorable Speaker, I'll move on to my penultimate issue, which has to do with the Stats Bank. With your permission, I would gladly ask honorable members of Parliament just to engage with me in a minute, either by looking on the screen or taking your phone and type in the address that we have there, which is statsbank.statsghana.gov.gh. Honorable Speaker, this is a platform that we developed in 2023, and it was our expectation that as a country we would have a one-stop shop, whether you belong to any of the ministries, departments, and agencies, we would have a consensus where all our data, irrespective of the issue, would be deposited on this statistical online bank. So if you get onto this statistical online bank, you don't see only the population and housing census, you see different macro data sets coming from either the Ministry of Finance, coming from the Central Bank, and also coming from the Ghana Statistical Service. In addition to collecting data from across different government institutions, we are building this platform to be able to give us historical data that how different policies over time has worked. So, Honorable Speaker, if we get onto the platform, there is a part of the platform that is accessible for detailed work, which I know per your mandate, time will not permit you. So we've just created a chat start window, which allows you to type in any issue that you want to investigate, and then the results is going to pop up. So my colleague will just type in, assuming the Honorable Member of Parliament for Pru East and Pru West wants to assess the unemployment rate between their respective districts. All that you just type in is unemployment followed by Pru East and Pru West, and the results would pop up for us to see which of these two districts, or for that matter, constituencies, are doing well in this particular area. The way we've captured the indicators for this chart was to look at the long-term development plan and identify the 26 indicators that are in that long-term development plan on social and development issues, and provided the statistics accordingly. So, Honorable Speaker, what we now see popping up is District Pru East, which has an unemployment rate of 12.2%, and Pru West, which has an unemployment rate of 8.1%. We can do that for another variable like open defecation, which is one of the issues that we have in the long-term sustainable development plan. Honorable Speaker, on the left-hand side, if you go to the macroeconomic indicators, if you click on View More, it enables you to drill down to look at the price indices, either based on our producer price index or our consumer price index, or look at real sector issues, which is our gross domestic product. Honorable Speaker, if you click on that and click on consumer price indices, under the prices and inflation, you scroll down, it gives you the opportunity to get historical data and better understand what is happening to our consumer price index and rate of inflation. Honorable Speaker, I'm aware that this might take a bit of time for members to go through. Our plea this afternoon is, going forward, we institutionalize a working relationship with the subcommittees, especially the Finance Committee that we've been engaging in the past, and also the newly created Economy and Development Subcommittee, so that we can further drill down some of these issues and enable us to use data and statistics to influence policies, evaluate policies, to complement the monitoring role for data and statistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Nim. Honorable members, I think it was loud and clear. So I'll invite members, if they have certain concerns or certain further explanation. Yes, Honorable Minister for Fisheries.
Thank you very much. So, Prof, in taking a certain decision, it's important, for example, that we have data on current fish stock levels. Is this something that your institution focuses on, or perhaps working together with the Fisheries Commission of the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture would assist? If we wanted the same data on, say, tuna that is harvested in our waters and exported, would your institution have the data as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello?
Prof, you hold on, you take a number of them, then I'll give you the opportunity.
Speaker,
yes. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to find out if you have any data on water at the Kintampo North municipality. Do you have any data on that? Water. there are water challenges in the municipality, and I just want to know if you have data on that.
Yes, Dr. Kabilu.
Mr. Speaker, first I want to commend the Ghana Statistical Service for this initiative. I have followed your data, and I can say that your data has been a useful source of data for us in the research, those in the research field. I've written a number of papers based on your data, but one thing that comes up often is the reliability of your data, whether or not as a country we can and we should strive to rely on your data, because no one can come from outside and know our data more than we do. What measures are we taking to ensuring that our data so generated would have the reliability and people will be accepted universally? Second issue has to do with the app, the starsbank.starsghana.gov.gh. I just tried to use it when you were giving us are they key? Is it key sensitive, especially the search or interaction? Because I've searched a couple about my district, but I've not had any feedback on it. Is it key sensitive, or you have to use it so that the information can readily be provided? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes. No, let me take a bit more. Then. No, I'll come back. I want to take about 5 or 6. Then I'll give you the opportunity to respond. Then I come back. No, you hold on. You'll be given the opportunity. Yes. Let him go to Peter. Wa East.
Wa West.
Wa West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prof, I get a bit scared listening to you. We are in a developing country, and we all believe that technology is an accelerated development, and we can't do that without data and statistics. And you are painting the picture like our data and statistics section is still evolving as a country. For 68 good years, what drives us? And what do you think will do us better looking at tomorrow and the fact that we are still evolving as a developing country in the area of data and statistics? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take last one, then I'll go to Prof, then I'll come to the next one. Yes, Honorable Isaac Boama.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. I have 2 questions for the government statistician. The first has to do with the legal and coordination framework. The Statistical Service is supposed to coordinate with a lot of state agencies to assist it in its work. And all of these agencies are also governed by certain regulatory frameworks or legal frameworks, which poses some challenges in terms of the effectiveness of their work. Can the government statistician tell us in this House what are some of the challenges he's been facing in this coordination exercise, so that, and what assistance he thinks Parliament can be of to him? My second question, I'm referencing his document, the brief on activities within, page 32, on the operational focus of NSAC. You said establish an effective national statistical system. You were supposed to develop and submit to Cabinet a data revolution policy. And date was 2023, end of 2023 calendar year. I just want to know how far you've gone with this particular policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, let me allow the government statistician to respond to the earlier concerns raised by members. Then I'll come to the next round. Yes, Prof, you have the floor now.
Honorable Speaker, once again, thank you for the opportunity, and honorable members, my heartfelt appreciation for the diverse issues that have come up. I would carefully go through each of them. Honorable Speaker, I'm happy for the question that has come from the Minister for Fisheries. And why I'm excited about that is, if you look at our food composition for inflation, we have different items of fish that is influencing our food inflation, which are very significant. Either fish that we get from the sea, fish that we get from the river, herrings, and so on. So this is a conversation that I'm very much looking for in terms of how we can build not only price data related to fish, but also get a sense of the production which you talked about. Honorable Minister, the good news is that we rely on the Fisheries Commission for data for our GDP, for the production side, if we want to estimate our quarterly and annual GDP. So based on the information that we get from the Fisheries Commission, that is what feeds into the GDP computation. As I indicated, we never have a conversation on changes in food production, fish production in this case, and how that is impacting on fish prices, and whether there are geographical differences or otherwise. We treat them as different economic variables, and sometimes they move in different directions. So I'm hoping that with the question that you've asked, we can really strengthen that conversation, better look at the production figures from a tuna side, from a herring side, monitor the prices more carefully so that we can set targets in bringing down prices of fish at that granular level. The second issue that you brought up, which again I'm pretty much excited about, Honorable Speaker, we've started working with the customs divisions of the Ghana Revenue Authority, and since 2022 we've been publishing quarterly trade statistics and also annual trade statistics, and we are also able to monitor price changes in the export of different items. So with that administrative data from the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority, it's a window for us to further engage to see how exports and imports of tuna in this case can be tamed down in the spirit of bringing down our rate of inflation. Honorable Speaker, the second question on water bodies was a bit broad, but the good news is that we can look at different dimensions of this. At the micro level, we can look at issues around access to improved water, which we do anytime we do our demographic and health survey, and indeed other surveys like the population housing census and the living standard survey. What as a service we are concerned about lately is a demand-driven approach to look beyond improved access to improved water and begin to think about our water bodies that are being contaminated or are being affected by the illegal small-scale mining that is happening. This is an activity that Ghana Statistical Service will need the collaboration of the implementing institutions to enable us get a better hold on our water bodies across these indicators. Honorable Speaker, the second question that came is very critical, which has to do with reliability of the GSS data. Per the law, the Ghana Statistical Service is mandated to designate any statistic, irrespective of where it is coming from, as either official statistics or, for that matter, any other statistics that one would want to engage with. But through the National Statistical System, the Statistical Service Act is categorical on the processes that we should go through. And one of the things that we should do is to set up a data quality assurance framework and also set up a code of ethics and practice. And I'm very much happy with the issues that you've raised, in as much as the Act categorically says that we have not been successful in setting up a strong National Statistics Advisory Committee. And the reason is that anytime we call meetings for the National Statistics Advisory Committee, we don't get leadership of the various ministries, departments, and agencies. So it's always a challenge pushing forward how we can get the designation of different statistics across different government ministries, departments, and agencies. Honorable Speaker, a specific request going forward would be the administrative data that is being collected across different government MDAs. So, for instance, the Ministry of Education since 2000 has been collecting the Education Management Information System. The Ministry of Health has the Health Management Information System. I'm very much aware that the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection has quite a lot of administrative data, and it's common across all these government ministries, departments, and agencies. But once we don't get the leadership of the various government ministries, departments, and agencies reconciling or even getting access to these administrative data sources as a benchmark for our surveys and censuses is always a challenge. So this is a specific plea that we are putting to the floor of Parliament to identify ways by which the word National Statistical System, as has been stated in the Act, can be empowered to ensure that we can have an integrated form of data that we use to inform our policies. Honorable Speaker, by that I've answered the third and the fifth question, so I'll move on to the issue of the Honorable Minister the Honorable Member for Wild West on the issue of data, technology, and statistics. I would admit that our data and statistics space is evolving based on the issues that I've raised, and that is the more compelling reason why we are seeking the attention of the 9th Parliament to ensure that we hasten that process. As I indicated, in other jurisdictions, they've clearly separated the mandate of the data community from the mandate of the statistics community and put in structures to ensure that their data fits into their work outputs fit into each other. This is something that we've not carefully thought through, and that is part of the reason why we get the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization coming up with a national data strategy and also an artificial intelligence strategy, which all revolves around data and technology, but without recourse to the data and statistics space for official statistics that are needed for policy making. Honorable Speaker, the last issue on the data revolution was one of our efforts to raise these issues a couple of years back. So we presented the document, which is an annex to the document that we've shared with you, and our anticipation at that time was to get Cabinet's approval so that as a country we can reflect on the steps for a data revolution exercise. If you look at the document that I've shared, we've listed 7 issues that we thought should happen. We have a lot of policy documents that, Honorable Speaker, do not have statistical targets, which we think is simply not right. We have a lot of gaps between different tenures of policy documents across different government institutions, which affect the implementation policies. So we had identified issues around the data, statistics, and policy space, which will strengthen how these 3 elements will transform lives as we also desire. So we hope that we'll get your assistance to push forward this data revolution agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, we'll take the second round of questions. So let me begin with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I also want to start by the synergy of data sources. Oftentimes, an opposition party heavily relies on either an IMF data or the World Bank, whilst the government focuses on GSS. So my point is that where do they get their primary data from? Is it from you, or where does the disparity come from? Number 2, I want to know the end-year GDP growth and the drivers of the growth, end-year inflation, and then end-year unemployment rate. Thank you.
Very well. Yes. Yes, honorable member.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Speaker. Prof, I must commend you for the very good work you're doing at GSS. I'm also happy you use ProEase as your example, and I'm happy I've seen some indicators in there already. I'm from ProEase, so I'm happy to know that. But on some specific developmental issues, when you go to the local government, they have this local empowerment proposal document, which they did from 2020 to 2024. I want to find out, was GSS involved in the data they use in assessing the developmental projects or the data and whatever an investor could actually come to the MMDA to come and invest into. I want to know whether GSSS, you are part of that collaboration. And as you sit as government statistician, what role does local government have to play with you to know that when you go to the local assemblies, you are duly represented and your data is apt, is on point, so that when people begin to search about your district elsewhere outside Ghana, they know that whatever source they are getting is authentic and having not to rely on other sources. And just like my brother said earlier, where from this data that all the time we seem to have that disparity. We are projecting inflation rates, and they are quite different from what the monetary policies are giving us, knowing very well that when monetary policy rates are there, it should actually match with inflationary rates. How do we have such disparity? And it hasn't been today. When you look at the data right from the early 2000s, you see that where we are supposed to have monetary rates regulating the flow of money in the system, it doesn't match. Rates are quite disparate. And I want to know, GSSS, what your standard is on some of these things. Thank you.
Very well. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity, team, for walking us through a very important session. We all know that data is very, very important in the sense that without data, it will be difficult to arrive at making up decisions. And we also have to rely on data to be able to address our challenges. My first question is in connection with what was raised by Dr. Kabiru on the issue of validation. So how do we ensure that the data we collect is validated so that it can stand the test of time? The other issue has to do with the decentralization of the data collection. Many a times, I see that in Collector, you often work closely with ISE. It appears they are your major partners. Meanwhile, we have other institutions across the regions where we can try to see how we can involve them to be able to decentralize and allow probably wider participation, which I think will also help in trying to ensure that we have better data outcomes. And the last point has to do with communication. You are doing a lot. You still have a challenge of breaking down your data to the ordinary Ghanaian. And so sometimes when you throw out your economic jargons or statistical data, many people are not able to comprehend the kind of data that you put out. How do you ensure that, or what steps are you going to take to make sure that you break down the communication to the ordinary Ghanaian? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, my brother.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, Prof, I want to find out, most often this taking of property rates, when they bring the data for a house, for instance, you see that the security post, the dog pens, or a poly tank just standing in the compound, all is taken as a property for the housing. And then they'll raise the property rent for each of them. And this has caused a lot of problems for the past years for people paying the property rent. Is that a method of actually taking the housing population census?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, my brother. Lawyer
James Enu.
Stema West?
Yes.
Okay, let's see it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. And let me commend Prof and the team for attending upon the House. I have a quick question. As a country, one of the challenges that we have faced is our inability to make sure that the informal sector is captured onto our tax net. It has been a long-standing challenge. I want to find out what your outfit has done so far or what you're going to do to make sure that this challenge is addressed. Thank you.
Yes. Leader, yes, lady. Today, when I was giving the ladies opportunity, I didn't see you.
Yes, please. That's very true, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, let's hear you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question is, when you go to Oti region, Biakunye, you have statistics on girl child education and then the teenage pregnancy rates. And also, I want to know how the data that you collect, how authentic it is sometimes. Because we normally see your people on the ground going around taking the data and all that. And we know what some of them do. So what will you do for those data to be very authentic? Because, sometimes when they come around, they don't really do what they are supposed to do. Because they know, after all, nobody is monitoring them. So some do the right thing, some don't. So what will you do to make sure that all these data that you collect are very authentic? And when I go onto your platform, I get exactly what I want to know. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Yes, Honorable Member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, my issue has got to do with conflicts in terms of challenges with population figures. If you look at the 2021 figures, there was a lot of issues and challenges in terms of some of the constituencies. And I'll use my constituency for example. At the regional review presentation, we made issues where you have some of the constituencies that are sandwiched in between, the communities that are sandwiched in between some 2 or 3 constituencies. If you come to Okre and Yilo Krobo, for instance, as one classic example, where you have a community on a stretch, you have one community belongs to Okre, the next is Yilo, the next is Okre, the next is Yilo. And during the census, the officers are zoned. So some officers who are assigned to one district, like Yilo, will be the one taking the communities that falls within Okre, with the assurance that those communities will later be sent back. But to date, there was a first hearing, but the review never came up. The district one never came up. The regional one never came up. And we are still using this population. I remember at the time, even the whole region had a view that the figures for Eastern region was a challenge. I don't know if that came true, but I can speak to Okre alone. And if you look at the categorizations, even looking at the projections, you see where Okre was before and how the figures fell. So we still have challenges with our figures that are sandwiched with Yilo Krobo, not coming to Okre. Again, I've also looked at how you arrange the age categorizations. And this is just a suggestion, I don't know. I've seen that it's in ages of 9. But one challenge we always have is, especially during the voter registration exercise, we tend to compare the statistics from GSS to the estimation of the new voter registrants by Electoral Commission. But one of the areas that becomes difficult to do that is that you always rank it up to 19 years. And so it is difficult to actually tell the below the 18 years batch. I was making a suggestion that to cure this mission, is it possible that from the 18 years downwards, that can be amended so that around that area we can know those from 0 to at least 17. Then the 18 can carry on so that that comparison can be correctly made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me come to leadership. Okay, you want to say something? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to know from the service whether you have data on the usage of opioids.
Can you come up again?
I want to inquire from the statistician whether they have data on opioid usage in Ghana.
Okay, data on opioid usage. Okay, very well. So let me come to leadership. Leadership, minority leader, deputy minority leader. Any comment? Oh, you're okay. Then you're okay. Then can you speak to the microphone?
I want to find out how your bureau has made itself relevant to the development agenda of the country. I don't know whether you have to sit and be invited into these issues before you make an attempt, because somebody asked a pertinent question on the local government issue. These are all things that can help us to achieve the development that we want. Thank you.
Yes, majority leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you very much for the presentation, Prof. I think looking at your platform, it looks quite an easy-to-use platform and a very, very useful one. I think the next stage, if that hasn't started already, is us for Parliament. We are building our own research base, how we will interface various institutions that are building their own research space with your systems. The other question that seems to be a common question around here, and I believe I have asked a similar question before at another place, is the issue of data. That we believe that you are, when it comes to Ghana as a country, you are the parent source of data for the country. Therefore, I believe that the likes of the World Bank, IMF, all these Bretton Woods institutions get their data from you, or at least most of it from you. But many a times, when people are looking for information or data on Ghana, they tend to go to the World Bank, the IMF, and these data are information that we will be able to find from you. But then, because of the issue of discrepancies that I believe there's a reason for, your information or your data turns out to be different from the same data that we try to gather from the IMF and the World Bank. And therefore, when we have a debate on the floor, people choose the data that suits their argument. Therefore, you have the two sides speaking to different, kind of information from different sources. Can you, just for the education of members here, why that actually happens? Because I believe that there's a reason for that. And so that if we are picking this data to make our argument, we can make sure that we know what information we are picking and that the arguments we are making are actually valid ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I'll give the floor to the government statistician. Prof, you have the floor now by responding to honorable members.
Honorable Speaker, once again, my heartfelt appreciation to yourself and honorable members for the engagement. Clearly, it points to the relevance of the work that we're doing at the service. Honorable Speaker, in the course of my submission, I might tie a couple of questions together especially on the questions that are related to the credibility, the reliability, the variation between our numbers and that of other international organizations, notably the World Bank and the IMF. Honorable Speaker, let me highlight 3 things. As I indicated in my earlier submission, we have listened to the floor of Parliament for quite some time now, and also in the past couple of days. And one of the things that we see very missing in the submission of statements that have numbers in it is the source of the information and the criteria by which that information that is being submitted is being put out there. Anytime we put out a statistic and we don't go ahead to ask where are you getting the data from and how have you reached that number, it poses a challenge to users. The second reason that I want to put to the fore for our reflection is the reason why international organizations put out numbers is always not the case why national government would put out numbers, even if we are talking about the same issue. Every international organization would put out a number that has gone through some standardization across different countries to enable comparability across different countries. If a national government is putting out a statistic, the first thing you think about is the international comparison, but what you also need to think about is how does it fit your context. Honorable Speaker, I'm going to give 2 examples in this regard. Over the years, the International Labour Organization has come up with a variation in the measurement of unemployment. Ghana Statistical Service, by virtue of that, historically has used different measures for unemployment at a point in time where we said unemployment is simply those who didn't have work, they didn't have any work to go to, that is during the reference period, they didn't have work, they didn't have any work to go to, they were available for work and they were seeking for work. At some point, the International Labour Organization was defining this as a strict way of measuring unemployment. Over time, this measurement has been varied, and now it relaxes the seeking for job and only looks out for those who did not work, didn't have any work to go to, and were only available for work, without talking about whether the people sought for work or not. Honorable Speaker, this is the reason why we always say that anytime you see a number, think about the documentation that comes with the numbers. Another example is the measurement of food security, food insecurity. Honorable Speaker, the Food and Agriculture Organization has an 8-point scale, which it calls the Food Insecurity Experience Scale, for the measurement of food security. The World Food Programme has its extended model for measuring food insecurity, which goes beyond whether you experience hunger and so on, and begins to look at issues around the nutritional content and so on. These are 2 international organizations that are putting 2 different figures out there on food insecurity. Honorable Speaker, this is why I indicated that as a country, which of the measures do we want? We've left it to Ghana Statistical Service over the period to be publishing both measures of food insecurity simply because it is these international organizations that provide resources for the measurement of food insecurity in the country. This is one of the things that led us to think about a data revolution agenda where we would bring the Ministry of Food and Agri together and the Ministry of Health and tell us how do we want to measure food insecurity given the different policies that we want to put in place. Unfortunately, Honorable Speaker, as I indicated, we didn't get the buy-in of the top level of these MDAs, so we got varying measures of food insecurity. Honorable Speaker, the last submission that I want to make on this is the selective use of statistics based on which statistic favor the argument that one is making. And this comes back to the point that I was making earlier on. Anybody who wants to see unemployment in a favorable way, Honorable Speaker, will use the strict measure of unemployment. Because once you are looking at you didn't work, you are available, you sought for work, your unemployment figure will be lower than one that leaves it to a point where you didn't work and you are not available, but no question on whether you sought for work or not. So there is always the selective use of statistic given how we want to use it. And that is why we are calling for a mechanism that would enable us get the other documentation around statistics and measurement and mechanisms to verify the numbers that we use. Honorable Speaker, I'm hoping this helps, but going forward, we are very much happy to further engage on the details to bring much more clarity on this. Honorable Speaker, there was a question on end-of-year GDP, end-of-year inflation, and end-of-year unemployment rate. Honorable Speaker, these three issues equally fall in line with my earlier submission. As a country, we have been very religious in producing GDP figures and inflation figures, but we have not been very religious in which GDP figure or inflation figure we're talking about. So if somebody asks, end-of-year GDP figure, is it the last quarter GDP figure, which is 3.6, or is the annual GDP figure, which is 5.7? And if it's end of year, if it's the last quarter GDP figure of 3.6, what does the 3.6 mean? And if it's the 5.7% throughout the year 2024, what does it mean? So we definitely need further interrogation of the numbers to have clarity in our minds whether the 3.6 is comparing the last quarter of 2023 with the last quarter of 2024. And the 5.7% is comparing the average for the entire year 2024. I pretty much like the question on the drivers of GDP in 2024. And the reason is that it's going to guide the conversation of the House of Parliament on the review of the budget. Honorable Speaker, in 2024, throughout the calendar year, the industry sector recorded the highest growth rate of 7.1%, followed by the services sector of 5.9%, and the agricultural sector growing by 2.8%. 7.1% for the industry sector, 5.9% for the services sector, and 2.8% for the agricultural sector. Honorable Speaker, as I indicated, these three broad categorizations will not tell us much if you don't look at the contributions of these three broad categorizations to the 5.7 growth rate that we saw in GDP. Of the 5.7 growth rate that we saw in GDP, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members, the services sector contributed the most, 2.51 percentage points of the 5.7 GDP growth rate that we saw for 2024, followed by the industry sector, which mining and quarrying is part, gold is part, which contributed 2.24% of that. The agricultural sector contributed 0.6 percentage points, and net indirect taxes contributed 0.33%. So we really need to look at further disaggregation of the 5.7 and the contribution of the various sectors. And as I said clearly, the services sector contributed the most of 2.51%. Honorable Speaker, you can drill further down, and clearly you see that within the services sector, what is driving the services sector is information and communication, and in this case, is data and SMS messages that we are using. Once you are drilling down, it gives us the opportunity to influence our policies rather than using the 5.7 for monitoring purposes. Honorable Speaker, the second variable had to do with inflation, which we ended with 23.4% for 2024, keeping in mind that it went up to 23.8% and further 23.1% in February 2025. We have always put out the argument that beyond the year-on-year inflation, we also have the month-on-month inflation. And from our last release, the month-on-month inflation, that is general price increases between January and February 2025, indicated a 1.3% increase of our general goods and services. Honorable Speaker, I indicated that we have been religious with GDP and inflation, but less particular with our unemployment rate. Historically, until 2 years ago, we had measured our unemployment rate only when we do the population and housing census and the Ghana Living Standard Survey. And for once, we did the labor force survey in 2015. The periodicity of our labor force survey was at a minimum of 5 years, and as we are all aware, the population and housing census is a decennial activity. We were not able until 2022, as I said earlier on, compare unemployment rates over time simply because of the variation in the ILO measure, that is the strict and the relaxed measure that we talked about. Honorable Speaker, since the first quarter of 2022, quarterly we've deployed people to the field, and we have been able to produce quarterly unemployment rates since the first quarter of 2023. Thankfully, in the week of 24th of March, we're going to release the unemployment rate up to the last quarter of 2024. Our last figure in the mid of 2023 put our unemployment rate at about 13.1%. Honorable Speaker, I move to the question from the Honorable Member from Pro East, and I want to say a very big thank you to him for the question because it aligns with the reorientation that is happening at the Statistical Service, and this reorientation is from two perspectives, and it also relates to the minority leader's question. One is how we relate to local development policies, and two is how we make ourselves more relevant. Honorable Speaker, as I said, the document that we've shared with you is a clear demonstration of how we want our data and statistics to be relevant. That is why we took pains to look at the Resetting Ghana agenda, look at the focal areas that will be needing statistics, and see how we can align to the data and statistics that are needed from the Resetting Ghana agenda. I also want to mention to the minority leader that prior to this, we took the health sector medium-term policy, and we did what I mentioned earlier on, the statistical profiling of the document in there. We did the same for the Ministry of Local Government based on their urban policy. And to our surprise, most of these sector-level policy documents do not have statistical targets. And once they do not have statistical targets, there is very minimal we can do from the side of Statistical Service. And that is why we are calling for a national consensus on how to build the core set of data and statistics which is required for our development. So we are hoping that through this medium, we can have better and strengthened policy engagement to define the data and statistics that we need. Honorable Speaker, specifically to the issue of local empowerment proposal, I cannot say offhand whether the service is aware of it because I don't have knowledge about it. What I can say is that we support the National Development Planning Commission in their processes of empowering the MMDAs in coming up with their development documents. So invariably, we have a role in that. But again, that is more on the monitoring side of things, Honorable Speaker, rather than the policy intervening side of things. What we've done as a Statistical Service, Honorable Speaker, is following the population and housing census, we've developed district rankings across different indicators that we can find in the previous development plan and also going forward in the long-term development plan that I talked about. Specifically, we have approached all the MMDAs to give us data in the last 15 years on their administrative data over time so that we can build some comparative data to enable us to prospectively track what we are doing. Honorable Speaker, there was a question on our engagement with ISA. I must say that we had a stronger relationship with ISA some decades ago, and that was the process where we're trying to build our capacity within the service. We've now expanded our engagement, and this was manifested during the population and housing census and our ongoing surveys, where we practically engage with all the tertiary institutions across the country, where they support us in the process of conceptualization, developing of the instrument, and the conduct of the analysis after the data collection has been done. So our mandate has been expanded beyond strictly working with ISA. Honorable Speaker, there was a question on communication, and that is also pivotal to the reorientation and the data revolution interventions that we are trying to institute. Honorable Speaker, a couple of years back, we instituted the Statistical Literacy Program, which we conduct across our tertiary institutions. We also instituted the Hackathon intervention also across our tertiary institutions. And as I've demonstrated today, we're trying to make our statistics more user-friendly by looking at just the numbers from text rather than looking at the numbers from graphs and tables. And that is the reason behind we thought the Statistical Online Bank should be accepted by all of us and expanded to be used by all government agencies. Honorable Speaker, there was a question from the Honorable Member from Oti region, and the question was whether we had data on girl-child education and teenage pregnancy. Honorable Speaker, we have presented this data from the population housing census in different formats. What I didn't show today is that if you go on our Statistical Online Bank, there is what we call the Census Atlas. Once you click on the Census Atlas and you hover your mouse across the Ghana map, whatever indicator that we collected during the population housing census, you're going to get that figure for your region. Again, from the Statistical Online Bank, you get the data from all the 9 administrative districts in the OT region. And that is what we want to do with disaggregated data. Honorable Speaker, we don't wait for 10 years to update the figures on these very key important indicators. We have adopted what we call the small area estimation, and anytime we do a survey, including our ongoing annual household income and expenditure survey, our demographic and health survey, and our living standard survey, based on the survey estimates, we are able to generate estimates for these very important statistics at the district level. And this is also updated and placed on our website. Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Member from OT made a specific submission on how we validate or verify the numbers that we get, because we are aware that sometimes our field operatives do contrary as we've advised them to do. Honorable Speaker, I don't intend to go through this process of the technical details that we go through as a service, but quickly let me mention 2 things. We distinguish between what we call verification and what we call validation. What we call verification is within the data collection exercise and what you are getting from the averages from other geographical areas, we set a threshold for every variable, and once we get a response outside this variable, we call and immediately get a supervisor to verify the authenticity of the number that we are getting. This runs across all our data collection exercise. So the verification exercise is done within the data collection window. Honorable Speaker, the second thing that we do is the validation exercise. As we speak, we have the ongoing Ghana Living Standard Survey. It's collecting information on, let's say, the anthropometric indicators. We have an idea of where Ghana's stunting rate is from our demographic and health survey. Honorable Speaker, this is not a variable that you expect it to change by 10 percentage points over a 3-4 year period, because it's a long-term variable and it changes slowly. So what we do with the validation exercise is whatever figure that we're getting from the current period, it should make some intuitive sense from the perspective of what we've gotten from that particular statistics historically, and more importantly, what we are getting from the region. So these are 2 quick approaches that we put in place to ensure that we verify and validate the numbers that we get from the field. And also to reiterate, that is the essence of the data quality assurance framework, which is not supposed to be handled by only the Ghana Statistical Service, but the National Statistical System through the National Statistics Advisory Committee. Honorable Speaker, I very much appreciate the concern from the colleague from Yilo Krobo on the population figures. And Honorable Speaker, this is something that I personally would want to bring to your attention for follow-ups. Prior to the 2021 population housing census, we had a number of districts that had boundary disputes. We went through a process with the Ministry of Local Government, the then Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development, submitted a report, and the recommendations of that report are yet to be attended to. We are hoping that through this submission, we'll get clarity on how those boundary district disputes would be addressed. There was a related question on the age in single years. Honorable Speaker, I want to encourage the Honorable Member that on our statistical online bank, we have years based on different categorizations, including single years. So it's not only restricted to single years. We have age from 0 to 99 plus, and also have done the categorization either based on dependency or on a 5-year gap. Honorable Speaker, I've answered the question from the minority leader in terms of how we are making ourselves relevant. And from the majority leader, we are hoping that our submission today would go to strengthen how we build a stronger interface between what we are doing at the Ghana Statistical Service and what is being done in Parliament. We are currently in the process of signing an MOU with the Research Department of Parliament, and we're hoping that that window will strengthen the engagement. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Professor Samuel Nim. On behalf of the leadership and entire House, let me extend our profound appreciation for just coming to share with us some statistical information which are so crucial to all of us, and you have done so nicely with members. I think everybody is happy about the way you've responded to our concerns. I am particularly happy about your institution and probably your good self for actually insulating that institution from political manipulation. At least observing you and your institution, you have manifestly positioned yourself to be indeed an independent institution. I wish you to keep it up and do what is expected of you, because the nation actually relies so much on your institution. On that note, once again, we are very happy and we thank you for attending upon the House to share with us certain critical information. We are grateful to you, and you are hereby discharged. Thank you, sir. I even introduce. Prof, members are saying you didn't introduce you are, especially the woman.
You came so important and didn't introduce yourself.
Do that.
Honorable Speaker, my apologies. I was ably assisted by the Deputy Government Statistician in charge of social and population statistics in the person of Dr. Fosina Frimpong Engwa. And also, I was accompanied by the Director of Administration in the person of Mr. Kojo Asante Mensah. Honorable Speaker, last but not the least, Mr. Emmanuel Kobina, who is the Director of Internal and External Cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Thank you very much. Leadership, any indication?
Mr. Speaker, I think we've done more than 5 hours. And I propose
you are right.
that we adjourn sitting.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I think we'll adjourn sitting today till tomorrow. 10.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, let me also thank you for your cooperation. We've done well today, and sitting has been peaceful, very cooperative. So let me thank you once again. On that note, we will proceed to adjourn the House to tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the forenoon. Tomorrow is 13th, 10 o'clock in the forenoon. The House stands adjourned.